Friend of Arkansas Athletics and all of SEC Athletics overall. Joining us here, Tom Hart, voice of SEC Network. You might have heard him on the XFL before the coronavirus shut everything down. Of course, you heard him on plenty of SEC Network broadcasts as well. Tom, it's good to talk to you. How's life been treating you this last month? It's not been what we expected.
No, not what anybody expected. I can't complain here in Atlanta with my family and safe and everyone's accounted for. Our biggest concern is finding activities to fill the day, and worrying about others and generally other places, and hopefully everybody's staying safe and keeping their sanity, and just kind of sitting back and playing the waiting game. It's amazing that people are asking and expecting me to stay at home and sit on my couch. I'm pretty good at that.
Pretty good at that. That's usually where I prep for a lot of games. So it's just I'm sitting there without games to prep for. So, and I wondered how you looked at this. I've asked this from some other play-by-play broadcasters, and specifically for people that do baseball, which is a day-to-day thing, and you've done baseball at a couple of levels. Shared sacrifice right now, and the idea that all of us have had to give something up. I thought I would crumble without baseball, to be honest. But for the last month, I've found myself being able to handle this. And I think the idea that you've been dealing with it, that my co-hosts are dealing with it, everybody dealing with this at the same time has made it a little bit easier for me to handle it. How has it made you feel?
Yeah, there's a community of and everybody involved at different levels. I've talked to my friends. I was just on the phone with Boog Shambi this morning, who obviously does Major League games for ESPN and has been a big part of their coverage. And I was looking forward to listening to him and watching him with Chipper Jones this year. It's going to be the new Wednesday night ESPN crew. I think it's Wednesday nights. We never got a chance to see him. Folks in the game, from trainers to players to former players to coaches. And you're right, baseball especially is, don't get me wrong, football is the most popular sport in the country. But baseball is different in the sense that it's part of your daily life. College teams playing anywhere from 4 to 5, sometimes, rarely, but occasionally 6 games a week, I suppose. Major league teams playing just about every day. Same thing if you've ever covered the game in the minors, and I know you have. In fact, my first year covering baseball in the minor leagues as a radio announcer, I was just an intern, but I was doing all the road games, so I did 100, I was at 140 games over, so what would that have been? Like 100 and, depending on your schedule, you get 140 games over 150 days or something like that.
Yeah, that's about right.
Maybe a little bit more with an All-Star break, I suppose. Maybe I didn't account for that. But I just remember going to the ballpark the day after the last game. I went to the ballpark, not that I was paid to be there or needed to be there, but just to kind of tie up some loose ends and gather some things. And I was driving back to my host house, and it was about 5 o'clock, and I was like, man, I need to go to a ballpark. And I was driving back kind of through their neighborhood, and I saw a Little League game going on. And I pulled over and parked the car and went and sat in the top of the little metal bleachers and watched about 2-3 innings of a Little League game, or maybe it was a high school JV game, I suppose. That's probably what it was in September. Knew nobody there. I barely even knew what the mascots were, but I just had this insatiable need to watch some baseball and be around it. So I just think baseball is different because it gets into your schedule, it's in your blood, and it's a daily occurrence. Just like some people go spend $4.80 on a latte every day just because that's what they do, and their car is pulled towards that coffee drive-through. Baseball is the same way. So, yeah, I think you miss it more within the throes of a season and that calendar, that part of the calendar.
Yeah, you described what I think is called a Brockmeyer moment. It's like, what do announcers do? And they're not allowed to announce. They just go sit at a ballpark, That's a Brockmeyer moment. I've had a few of those myself. And I can't bring myself to watch old games yet. I just can't do it. Even the games that I would say are my favorite ever, I'm much more interested in the idea of, man, it would have been Arkansas, Missouri State tomorrow. Would have been the Razorbacks and LSU this weekend at Alex Box Stadium. I can't do the old games just yet. Maybe give me another month.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just pulled up my calendar. I would have been coming off of my last XFL game yesterday and on my way to Tallahassee for Florida and Florida State, and then Mississippi State at South Carolina this weekend. So, in Oklahoma State, I think Oklahoma State's got their new ballpark up already. I'm not positive, on Sunday. So, I would have been right in the mix of it. That's about as far as I had my schedule through the next 2 weeks. And then after that, there's a bunch of question marks. So I try not to pull it up. When I pull it up, I severely miss it. If it's not in front of my face, I don't miss it as much. But I did get a text the other day from Kyle Peterson and me and Chris Burke. This was yesterday. He said, "Hey, boys, one of our games is on." It was Vandy LSU from the SEC tournament. And we're just lamenting how much we miss not just the games, but the camaraderie, being part of a team and getting on the road to go see everybody and hang out and tell stories and bust chops. All that is part of the community. All that is part of the camaraderie that goes with, what we do.
Speaking of Tom Hart here on Halftime, Tom, excuse me, I got my tongue twisted. You spoke on the XFL just a moment ago. Just talk about your time with the XFL, with the second coming of it, and then kind of just abruptly almost shutting its doors for the 2021 season. But first, before we get to that, just talk about the XFL season this year. Is it just kind of how it all went for you?
Well, first of all, we got 5 weeks in, got the half the season before COVID shut everything down. I was prepared to leave the SEC basketball tournament. I called the first 2 games on that Wednesday night and was supposed to work through Friday night and then get on a flight from Nashville to Seattle first thing Saturday morning to go up to Seattle for a game. So that would have been week 6. I thought through 5 weeks it was awesome. It was so, if haters are going to hate, and you're going to get that no matter what, especially with something new. But the folks that reacted positively to it, and so many fans did, I thought it was fantastic. The television ratings were absolutely through the roof. The shared information that we got from coaches and coaching staffs and players was just awesome. I learned more about football in those 5 weeks than I ever knew, because you're hearing Hal Mummy call a play, and you can go talk to Hal Mummy about the air raid and what's more popular in college and the NFL right now than an offense that he birthed. So, talk to him about the foundation of that and the play calling and the intricacies of it, whether that's Hal Mummy or Bob Stoops or others, and spending time with players and having them explain to us what that process is like. It was a lot of fun, and I really thought that we were able to introduce some aspects, and the league introduced some aspects that probably would have been adopted by the NFL and may still be, or other leagues, college leagues. Number one would have been, there are a lot of different rules changes, not to get into the minutia, but the different kickoffs and the kickoff coverage and things along those lines. Extra points I thought were really interesting. But what I thought could have been most impactful from the league, and maybe this still happens, was the transparency that we got by having communications, microphones in not only on the white hat and the referee, but also in the replay booth. So you understood that there wasn't some tinfoil hat, drama going on. It was simply, was the call correct? Yes or no? What's the yard line and how much time's left on the clock? And once fans learned that, it was kind of like an aha moment. Like, oh, these are just guys and gals trying to get the call right to the best of their ability and then moving the game along. And I think anytime you can get a peek behind the curtain, anytime you can learn what goes into those processes is beneficial to the fan.
You touched on it a second ago, and I thought it was really interesting too, just the different rule changes and the different ways they played football. I thought the most interesting one for me was, like you mentioned, the kickoff return, where they had to wait until about the ball got to, correct me if I'm wrong, it was about to the players were lined up on the 25 and 35, I believe, or it may have been 20 or 30, but
players are lined up on the 30 and 35 yard line.
Okay.
So you're right across from each other. There is no 40-yard run-up, which leads to head injuries, concussions, and the like. And nobody can move until the ball is fielded or touched the ground. Then there's some other limitations regarding touchbacks, trying to negate teams kicking it out of bounds or kicking it through the back of the end zone. And, we saw teams kind of learn it and learn how to get creative with it. We saw St. Louis score on a reverse out of that formation, which was I didn't think we'd ever see. And And so anyway, you can, you think about your average NFL game. Most kickoffs obviously occur after scores, aside from the opening and the second half kickoff. And so you get nothing happens in NFL kickoffs anymore. I mean, they just bang it out of the back of the end zone. A lot of times in college too. In the NFL, it's a touchdown, extra point, timeout, kickoff, touchback, timeout, come back from break and play. You get 5 minutes of no action whatsoever. There's no reason to watch kickoffs anymore. So when you encourage returns, I think that's a great thing.
Do you think the NFL or maybe the NCAA or college football would consider implementing some of those rules that the XFL experimented with?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I know for a fact that they were looking at them. It's the kicking game especially. Such a high percentage of head injuries occur on the kickoff. So what are your choices? Your choices are to negate it to the point where you very rarely get a return, and then you're just talking about wasted time. And in this day and age where everybody wants the games to move along, that doesn't make much sense. Or you make it safer by putting everybody closer together, and you get action. So, yeah, I think they would absolutely be open to it. I think one of the shame of the season only lasting halfway is that we didn't get as many data points as we wanted. It's still a pretty small sample size. And while we were in front of a lot of people and the eyeballs were great in terms of television ratings, I still don't think, we reached as many people as we could, obviously. So if you get a random AD or a school president who just happens to have it on and sees it, or they get introduced to it, hey, we want you to check this out this weekend, that's a great way to get exposure for the possibility of rules changes. So it might be limited, and of course, with everything that's going on currently nationally, that's going to limit a lot of thinking outside the box. Folks are just worried about getting games right now.
Tom, I want to close on something you hit on when you were discussing. You mentioned about you lived with a host family when you were working in the Braves minor leagues. That's the true sign of someone that lived the minor league experience. When you live with a host family, which I did for one summer, would have been the summer of '99 in Ogden, Utah. I was doing rookie league baseball there, and I mean, living with a host family is a crapshoot because you never really know what you're going to get. I heard some really interesting stories that I could never repeat on the air. I mean, I got in on some stuff, not even like looking through people's medicine cabinets or not, but you hear marital arguments when you're not trying to hear them. You can't help it sometimes. Did you have some interesting moments living with a host family? Because I never spoke to anybody that didn't.
Mine was relatively normal. I was actually living with the couple, the guy, it was my boss. And so, and I was on the road so much, and then we were at game, that's the one thing about the schedule. So I was either on the road and gone by myself, or when we were at home, I was at the ballpark for 14 hours a day. So they were really kind to open their doors to me when they knew I couldn't, and this is the reason why they do it, obviously, I couldn't afford it. And it's interesting if you follow what's going on, obviously, in the minors right now. Just got a text from my buddy who runs one of the AAA teams this morning with more news coming out. I think it was on Ballpark Digest, of moving closer and closer, shuttering a lot of those mom and pop teams. I think would be a terrible PR move on baseball's behalf within those communities. And you talk about people who didn't come back from the strike year. There's going to be a lot of people who won't look fondly upon Major League Baseball if they decide upon that. The growth of the game, I think, is very important, and the opportunities that it creates for a guy like Mike Piazza, who wasn't, a top 10 round draft pick. And there's a lot of examples of those guys who got opportunities and then made it. And you're talking about limiting those opportunities and restricting the growth of the game, I think would be a major mistake.
Tom, we could go forever with you, man. We got to cut it short there. I really appreciate your time. As always, it's always fun talking with you. Stay sane out there, and hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
That'd be great. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Tom Hart, SEC Network, always appreciate